There are things associated with sex with women that we can't necessarily relate to, where there are physical ties that stay with a woman when she has sex with a man. And that can affect you as a man by being with a woman that maybe through no fault of her own. Now I'm really getting out there, but
I'm
it's interesting
starting to
me.
realize maybe another issue might be some overthinking.
No, I don't do that.
Completely deconstructing a situation to where there's nothing sexy about it for miles.
You're not wrong. I can't deny the logic to your logic.
Going into this, I didn't have some idea that we were going to go on a walking tour of the red light district and you were just going to pick out a woman. I was going to peel off a couple of 50s and you would go consummate your love. But when you have a guy that's a 42-year-old virgin coming to your house and there's an open air sex market close by, you got to take him.
Peanut butter meat chocolate.
Virgin meat degenerate. But I don't think that you have any kind of judgment when it comes to sex work, do you?
Libertarian, you might have heard once or twice. In my politics, in my nature, in my energy,
right.
Safe, legal, consensual. At the same time, I am an uncle, I'm a brother, I'm a friend, I'm a son. And I gotta say, I have a bunch of nieces, I have a sister, I had a mom, and it wouldn't be my desire for them to ever get into that line of work.
You immediately kind of think about how the sausage is made.
I can't avoid
You don't just enjoy the flavor and the texture.
Not when it comes to that, for sure. Yeah.
And I think that was where I grossly miscalculated the situation. I was hoping to freak you out. Take a guy that up until this point has only really seen this kind of thing on maybe late night HBO or maybe a network procedural and go, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening, kind of just read out in the open. But I think rather than freaking you out, I bummed you out.
And it's no fault of your own, although you did bring me there.
And I agree, universally, not a great way, or at least a safe way to make money. But if I hadn't told you, do you think you would have even really known that these women were there for that purpose?
I probably would have put it together only through virtue of the way they were dressed.
Like, wow, this is a real busy street for some reason. A lot of foot traffic.
Well, the trains were up on the platform or whatever. It was very loud.
Yeah, it's under the elevated train. And we went from my place, which is about 20 blocks west of kind of where all this is going on. And as we're walking, I weirdly discovered you are not into Asian women.
I'm not, but they're not my go-to.
I'm kind of the same way. But I would say if there were any two guys that look like they would be cruising the streets for Asian women.
Sure, that I guess that uptight business class, I don't know, not that I'm a business guy at all.
Probably married to white women looking to kind of spice things up a little bit.
Yeah.
And, I explained to you that, the further we kind of walked, ethnicities vary. It's really just Asian and Latin women, some like darker kind of Afro-Latina women. So, there's kind of something for everybody. But nonetheless, Matt, still just very concerned with.
I'm like, is it a school night? Is it a work night? Well, I guess they're working, but.
Yeah.
And the whole atmosphere, too, where I guess how it was kind of integrated with also normal things like not kiosks, bodegas or whatever. People perusing them, outside shops, just people, all race, creed, color, sexuality, whatever. Everybody's out doing their things. And then it also, I was surprised about the amount of like kids that were around.
It's interesting that you should mention the kids being around, because I think ultimately the reason why that area has changed so much on Roosevelt Avenue is because people complained that all this was happening so close to schools. So weirdly, it's very different. This was months ago, and They have mostly shut everything down. It went from being, just a total free-for-all to then women having to kind of pretend like they're doing something. So there was one place where there was like probably 10 girls all standing outside of a massage parlor, and they were all just acting like they were waiting for the bus all day. The craziest one was I actually saw this very attractive Latin woman standing in front of basically like a card table with like a bunch of DeWalt drills and like tools and stuff on it. And I recognized her because she was one of the girls that is normally a prostitute, but she happened to be selling,
Power tools.
yeah, which I will say checks a couple of boxes for me. That
Yeah.
sort of would solve a problem that I didn't even know existed.
Until then. Yeah.
And these days, that kind of stuff isn't really going on. I don't know where it moved to, because I would imagine it probably moved somewhere else in terms of streetwalkers.
And I mean, I never wanted to be the stereotype when I say I put them on a pedestal, but I'll use certain terminology where it's like, oh man, goddesses and,
Right.
worship and stuff like that.
Yes.
But all that being said,
Which I'm sure there's a price for that.
oh, no doubt. But it's just, I think that's the one thing too, that of the many things that would stop me from kind of engaging, because my
Right.
logic is in my head, I'm going to be thinking, even if they obviously don't know me, I'm assuming they hate me. Even if they're attracted to me,
You feel like they resent you as the, hypothetical John in this situation.
even if they don't, I'll never know. I can't get comfortable enough, let alone to engage in that activity or in that sensual interplay. I'm not sure, how people put it these days. But it's just, I couldn't, physiologically, I would have a problem.
See, I would almost assume the opposite, where a lot of these women came from countries with a poor economic or political climate. They're here as maybe refugees. I know a lot of these women are from Venezuela, and they might actually look at you as like the check it out. So you could be, in a weird way, kind of like this savior.
Let's talk about steering into stereotypes. I never want to be a white knight per se. That's so corny.
Right.
Those dudes are just, it's, but there is that gene where we want to protect. We're wired that way, or a lot of us are. And again, I'm a brother, I'm an uncle, I'm a son, I'm a friend, I'm a coworker, and you do what you have to do.
Which makes you, a good person and a bummer to go to the red light district with.
And I do remember us having some of these conversations then too. I was kind of bringing it down, and I'm sorry, buddy.
One of the craziest things that I ever saw, there was a massage parlor that was pretty close to where I live. And one time I was just about to walk into the grocery store, and I saw what looked like a Buddhist monk, like one of those Tibetan guys with the kind of orange get up on. And he walked up, and one of these massage girls kind of was trying to seduce him. And I was like, wow, the groceries can wait. I got to see how this plays out. And I don't know if Buddhism has any problem with this kind of transaction going on. Nonetheless, I'm interested in, whether or not he's going to take her up on the offer. So there's like a back and forth, and it's kind of very flirtatious. And he's, this little round, bald guy, and he's very, clearly kind of blushing. He did not take her up on the offer, but I did think that it was interesting that you may actually be more empathetic than a Buddhist monk.
Yeah.
Your level of mindfulness may surpass.
Because it's well, why am I doing that? But no, you're not wrong, because if it's never going away and it just is what it is, there's nothing we can do about it, about people wanting those services and people selling those services. If we have to exist in that plane of reality, can we make it as safe as possible?
Yeah.
For obvious reasons.
Would you feel better about it if it was like in Amsterdam where they're behind glass?
I guess the vibe through virtue of that is different. And there's one thing that would still prevent me from ever seeking out those services. Again, not that people haven't been suggesting it for decades now. And you see the websites or whatever. And that's kind of, okay, I'm interested enough in it that I would go to the website, sure. But then you find something where like there's review sites and you see these guys, these Johns that are hiring these women, and the way they describe it, this is what happened, this is what she did, this is what she was wearing, this is what I did, this is what I had to do with the money, and my clothes and her clothes are this or that. We talked for a little bit before and after, and all so horribly awkward. I could not take myself seriously enough.
So my question is, how is that different? And would you ever consider that to be, a viable option for a guy your age in your position?
Still no. Because like I said before, just in describing like the reviews and just how it's set up, I couldn't imagine ever being in that situation. I couldn't take myself seriously enough. I couldn't take the situation seriously enough. And especially the fact that I can't believe the lie. You know what I mean? I can't.
Well, but here's the thing. You have to want to get inside of a woman enough. And for some reason, you don't
Yeah.
have that. Weirdly, you're kind of, and take this in the spirit in which is intended, and I'm very much generalizing, but you're kind of more like a woman.
I I'll take it as a compliment.
And I mean that as a compliment to you, and I also mean that as a compliment to women, because I think that they're just they understand how to control themselves, and they seem to want to control themselves.
Because yeah, it's funny. I guess you're not wrong in that. Yeah, my sensibilities or my energy or whatever might be more feminine.
And I'm not saying that you're a feminine guy, but I just mean in terms of your mentality and the way that you sort of approach that particular aspect of your life. And I think kind of what happened here is when you have that mentality, which a lot of women do, they're kind of just hanging out and they're fielding offers from men, right? But when you're a guy and you have that mentality, those offers don't really come in as much because you're a guy. You're expected to be the one going out and foraging.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. There are things associated with sex with women that we can't necessarily relate to, where there are physical ties that stay with a woman when she has sex with a man. If those aren't associated with a good frequency, a good situation, a good context, that kind of stays with them. Doesn't have to. You can't disassociate yourself from that vibe, but it stays with them. And that can affect you as a man by being with a woman that maybe through no fault of her own, now I'm really getting out there, but
I'm
it's
starting
interesting
to
to me.
realize maybe another issue might be some overthinking, over
No, I don't do that.
intellectualizing, completely deconstructing a situation to where there's nothing sexy about it for miles.
You're not wrong. I can't deny the logic to your logic, but I think that would stop me from perusing or engaging with somebody in that field, at least actively. All the associations associated with that, which obviously I'm being redundant there, but it all comes into play, at least in my head. So therefore, I just cannot get past those realities in my mind.
So there's any number of reasons why obviously you wouldn't want your first time to be with a sex worker. But would you have to be in a relationship with the person that you eventually lose your virginity to? Or can it just be like a dating situation? And if so, about how long would you estimate you would need to like get to know somebody before you would be comfortable enough?
Certainly, I would prefer a relationship context for obvious reasons. But am I open to like where you just start dating somebody seriously? Sure. No, absolutely.
So, streetwalker, too casual, but meeting somebody and going on 4 dates and really feeling a connection with them.
Yeah, I'm not the stereotype or the cliche that it has to be on my wedding night with a bed of roses and Kenny G and candles. And I'm not that guy at all. I can't wait for that. That's going to be great too, for sure. But the hope that I have in my head, it's part me, part imagination, part Harlequin romance bullshit, which I concede,
Right.
and it's part taking the best parts from the couples that have been in my life.
And that kind of brings us to the next segment, which is kind of popping the hood and getting into the nooks and crannies of what makes old Matty tick and what leads us to a situation where you're being coached through a very important part of your life by a completely unqualified guy from the internet.